The storm outside the research station roared like a living beast. Ice struck the metal walls again and again, making sharp sounds through the dark night. Mark Halley, a young human engineer, lay in his narrow bed and listened to the wind howl across the frozen planet. He had worked on many worlds before, but this one always felt different. The cold here was not normal cold. It felt alive, like something ancient moved through the storms. Mark pulled his blanket tighter around his shoulders. The room was dim, only lit by a small heater in the corner. The heater buzzed in a tired way, trying its best to fight the freezing air. Mark sighed. Sleep never came easy during these storms. The temperature dropped fast, and sometimes even the power flickered for a second or two. But tonight felt even colder than usual. So cold that his breath formed a cloud every time he exhaled. He shut his eyes and tried to relax. He needed rest. The generators needed repairs in the morning, and he could not afford to work half awake. Slowly, his breathing deepened. Slowly, his body started to drift toward sleep. Then he felt it. Something touched his leg. Mark froze. His eyes snapped open. The blanket moved softly, like something small was crawling underneath it. At first he thought it was the wind again, maybe shaking the bed. But no, the movement was gentle, warm, and alive. Mark held his breath. The storm outside suddenly felt far away. All he could hear now was his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He stayed completely still. Maybe he had imagined it. Maybe he was just tired. But then the blanket lifted near his feet. A tiny shape pushed up from underneath the fabric. And then another shape right beside it. Mark felt his skin prickle. The research station was sealed. Nothing should be able to get inside. Not animals, not insects, not anything. The security system sent alerts even for a mouse. So what was under his blanket? He reached for the small flashlight beside his pillow, moving slowly so he would not startle whatever was there. His fingers shook slightly as he clicked it on. A soft white circle of light filled the room. He lifted the blanket corner. Two tiny creatures stared back at him. He gasped so loud that the flashlight trembled in his hand. They were not animals he knew. Not from Earth, not from any catalog he studied. Their bodies were small and round, no bigger than kittens. Their scales were smooth, glowing faint blue like moonlight on water. Little wings rested against their backs. Their eyes were bright and full of fear and curiosity. They were dragon babies. Mark blinked. That was impossible. Dragons on this planet were only rumors. Some scientists believed the ancient caves below the ice held unusual life, but no one ever confirmed dragons. And no one ever said they were this small or this cute. The babies shivered from the cold. One of them squeaked softly and pressed its tiny head against Mark's leg, trying to hide under the blanket again. The other followed, climbing closer to his stomach. Their small bodies radiated faint warmth, but not enough to survive the frozen night. Mark stared, unsure what to do. Should he call security? Should he run? Should he carefully remove them from his bed? But as he watched the babies tremble, something shifted inside him. They were not dangerous. They were cold. Terribly cold. And they had chosen him, a human stranger, because he was warm. Because they were scared. Because they trusted him without knowing who he was. The storm outside howled louder, rattling the window like a warning. The research station lights flickered for a moment as the power grid fought the freezing wind. Mark slowly lowered the blanket back down, covering the babies again. They relaxed immediately. One crawled to the center of his chest and curled up. The other rested against his side. Their tiny claws were so light he barely felt them. He lay very still, stunned, confused, and strangely touched. He did not know where they came from. He did not know why they were alone. But he knew one thing with complete clarity. Tonight, these dragon babies needed him, and he would not turn them away. Mark woke the next morning with a strange, pressure against his ribs. For a moment, he did not remember what had happened the night before. His mind was still heavy with sleep, and the storm outside made the walls shake softly. Then he felt something warm shift under the blanket. Something alive. His eyes opened wide at once. The two dragon babies were curled against him like tiny glowing suns. Their soft blue scales shimmered gently in the dim morning light. One had tucked its small head into the fold of his shirt. The other lay across his arm, breathing in short, slow puffs. Both slept in complete trust, as if they had always belonged there. Mark did not move. He barely breathed. In the cold, silent room, he felt the strange weight of responsibility settle over him. These creatures had come to him for warmth. They had survived the night only because he let them stay. And now they were still here, choosing him again. But fear crept into his thoughts too. What if their mother came looking for them? What if adult dragons were real, massive, sharp-toothed, territorial? What if the science team discovered he had smuggled alien creatures into a living area? The rules on this research station were strict. Everything here was dangerous or fragile. Sometimes both. Bringing unknown creatures inside was forbidden. He swallowed hard. He should report this. He knew he should, but as he looked down at the tiny dragons, the fear slowly softened. Their small bodies were still shaking from the cold. They did not understand rules. They did not know how dangerous the world was. They were children, lost and alone on a frozen planet where even grown humans struggled to survive. Mark reached out one careful hand. He touched the nearest baby's head with the tip of his finger. The scales were smooth and warm. The little dragon made a soft chirping sound and moved closer, pressing into his palm like it knew he meant no harm. "Easy there," he whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The sound of his voice seemed to calm them. Both babies shifted and stretched their wings shyly. One wing brushed his chest with a gentle flutter. They made tiny noises, half squeak, half hum, as if trying to talk to him. Mark let out a slow breath. His fear faded again. Something else rose in its place, something he had not felt in a long time. Tenderness, protectiveness, a quiet sense of wonder, but the moment did not last long. A loud knock echoed through the hallway outside his room. Mark tensed. It could be another engineer, or a guard, or someone doing morning checks. Anyone who entered would see the dragons immediately. The babies sensed his tension. They froze. Their eyes widened. They looked ready to run or hide. Mark made a quick decision. He pulled the blanket up around them, covering their glowing bodies. Then he got out of bed carefully so they wouldn't fall. They stayed hidden, silent but trembling. He stepped to the door and tapped the control panel. The screen showed the face of his coworker, Jenna, looking tired and annoyed. "Mark, you awake?" she asked. "We need your help in the generator room. Something froze overnight." Yeah, I'll be there soon," he answered, trying to sound calm. She nodded and walked away. The moment the door shut, Mark exhaled sharply and leaned against the wall. His heart pounded in his chest. If Jenna had walked in just a little faster, everything would have fallen apart. He hurried back to the bed and lifted the blanket. The dragons peeked out with frightened eyes. Their wings pressed tight to their backs. "It's okay," Mark whispered. "You're safe here." One of the babies crawled out and nudged its head against his hand. The other followed, letting out a small, soft trill. Mark sat on the edge of the bed, letting them gather around him. Their trust touched him deeply, more than he expected. He wrapped them gently back into the blanket, making sure the warm air stayed trapped inside. They settled again, calmer now. He knew he couldn't keep them hidden forever. He knew he had to find where they came from. Maybe they had a nest. Maybe a mother. Maybe something much worse had happened. But for now, one thing was clear: they needed him. And he could not abandon them. Mark stood up, grabbed his coat, and prepared for the dangerous world outside. But this time, He wasn't stepping into the cold alone. He was stepping out as the guardian of 2 dragon babies who believed in him completely. The storm had finally softened by the time Mark stepped outside. The sky over the frozen world was a pale silver, glowing softly like a weak sunrise trapped behind endless clouds. Cold air bit at his face the moment he opened the station door. His breath turned into a cloud that drifted away and vanished in seconds. Inside his jacket, hidden close to his chest, the 2 dragon babies rested. He had wrapped them in a thick cloth and tucked them between the inner layers of his coat. Their tiny warmth pressed softly against him, much like holding a pair of beating hearts. Every few minutes one of them wiggled or let out a tiny hum, and the warmth shifted. Mark tried to calm his own nerves as he walked across the snow-covered ground. The cold here was brutal, but something inside him burned with determination. He had a mission now, not a scheduled repair, not a scientific test, not a duty ordered by the station. This mission came from his own heart, his goal. Find the nest or at least understand where the babies came from. He made careful steps across the ice, trying not to slip. The storm from the night before had carved strange shapes into the snow. Giant ridges twisted like frozen waves. Sharp pillars of ice rose from the ground like broken glass. The world looked as if the storm had clawed at it with angry hands, but Mark kept moving. He had seen something important earlier that morning, just before he left. Near the station's outer wall, faint but strange tracks had been pressed into the snow. Not human tracks. Not machine tracks. Small clawed prints glowing very lightly with blue dust. The same soft glow the babies carried on their scales. Mark followed them now. The tracks were uneven, like the babies were scared when they walked. Some prints overlapped each other. Some dragged. Some stopped completely, as if the babies had hesitated or hidden in the snow for a moment. Mark crouched and touched one of the prints. It was cold now, but he imagined the babies moving through the storm, weak, freezing, desperate. How long had they wandered before reaching his room? How had they survived this cruel weather? A shiver not from the cold ran through him. Something terrible must have happened for babies, this young, to end up alone. Mark stood again and scanned the horizon. The tracks led toward a stretch of jagged land where dark rocks rose from the ice like teeth. Beyond that area lay the entrance to the old cave systems, natural tunnels carved through the planet's frozen crust. People in the station often joked about creatures living there. Some believed in dragons. Others said strange energy pulses came from deep inside the caves. Most laughed or ignored the rumors. But Mark remembered hearing one thing clearly from the older crew. If anything on this planet is alive, it hides in the caves. And now he had proof. He reached the rocky area and moved carefully, climbing over ice blocks and sharp edges. The baby shifted inside his jacket, sensing something familiar or frightening. When he reached the first cave entrance, he paused. The opening was tall, shaped like a rough triangle, with icicles hanging like crystal spears. A cold wind carried a low, hollow sound out from the darkness, a lonely, echoing hum. Mark stepped inside slowly. The temperature dropped instantly. The cave walls glowed faint blue in places like veins of frozen light. The stone was smooth under his gloves. Water dripped somewhere far inside, echoing like distant footsteps. He tapped his flashlight on, sending a bright beam across the walls. And then he saw it. A broken nest, not a bird's nest. Not anything earthly. It was made of layered crystal, frost, and strips of some glowing material he couldn't identify. But the structure was cracked. Completely cracked. Pieces were scattered across the cave floor. Mark knelt beside it, feeling his chest tighten. He imagined the nest whole, glowing with warmth. He imagined the babies sleeping inside it, safe under a mother's wings. Then he imagined the storm strong enough to tear metal from buildings. A storm like that could shred anything outside. He whispered, "This must be where you were born." The babies inside his jacket trembled. Soft, scared chirps vibrated against his chest. They remembered this place. They remembered losing something here, maybe losing someone. Mark swallowed hard. He did not know what destroyed the nest. The storm. Or something else deeper in the caves. But he knew one thing with absolute clarity. The babies were not safe out here alone. He rose slowly and turned deeper into the cave. Gripping his flashlight tighter. "If your mother is alive," he murmured, "I'll find her. If she's not, I'll protect you." The cave air vibrated slightly. Like something far inside was stirring. Mark took a careful step forward. The dragon babies pressed closer to his heart. And the real danger had only just begun. Mark stepped deeper into the glowing ice caves, guiding himself with the thin beam of his flashlight. Every sound echoed. Every step felt louder than it should. The air inside was colder than the world outside, sharp enough that it stung his nose and made his breath fog instantly. The cave walls glimmered with lines of blue and white light, like frozen rivers trapped inside stone. The dragon babies inside his jacket moved restlessly. They were not crying, but they shifted and hummed in a soft, nervous way, as if they could sense something important ahead. Or something dangerous. "Easy," Mark whispered, placing a gentle hand over the front of his coat. "I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." His voice echoed down the tunnels, returning to him as a faint whisper. It made him feel even more alone. The broken nest he found earlier had told him one thing clearly. Something had forced the babies out of their home. And if a nest could be shattered that completely, then whatever did it must have been strong. He kept following the narrow path, climbing over frozen ledges and squeezing between walls of ice. The deeper he went, the warmer the cave became. Not by much, but enough for him to notice. His breath no longer fogged as heavily. The rock under his boots felt less brittle. Then he saw it. Another nest. But this one was old, abandoned, half buried in ice. It glowed faintly, like a memory still alive in the stone. Mark crouched beside it, brushing snow from the edges. The nest's crystal structure was elegant and strange, shaped like spirals woven together. It reminded him of a bird's nest, but more complex, like something built by a creature that understood beauty. These caves. They were not lifeless. They were a nursery. A long time ago, dragons must have lived here in large numbers. But now only traces remained. Empty nests. Dim cracks in the walls. Faint remnants of dragon songs trapped in the ice like ghosts. Mark stood and looked around. This was no random cave. It was a place of family, of birth, of ancient care. Something had happened to it. And that something might still be here. He continued forward. The path opened into a wider chamber. At the center lay a pool of frozen water with cracks of glowing blue light beneath it. The light pulsed gently, like breathing. The baby stirred again, pushing against his chest. They recognized this place. Mark knelt beside the pool. Something shimmered inside the ice images, almost like reflections, but not of him. Instead, shapes of dragons appeared, curled in sleep, wings folded, eyes closed. A deep sadness washed over him. This must be their history. He murmured. Their lives. Frozen here. The light flickered. The images faded. Mark stood again. He felt a heaviness in the air now, as if the cave itself was holding its breath. Then he heard it. A distant rumble. Soft at first, then growing louder. A sliding, scraping sound, like something large moving across stone. The babies immediately hid deeper into his jacket, trembling hard enough that he felt it through the layers. Mark froze. His flashlight trembled in his hand. He turned slowly toward the dark tunnel that connected to the chamber. "Is it your mother?" he whispered. But he did not believe it. The sound felt wrong. It came closer, slow, heavy, uneven. Something dragging itself. Something breathing loudly, harshly, like each inhale hurt. Mark stepped back. His body told him to run. His mind told him to stay calm. But before he could decide, he saw a shape shifting in the darkness. At first, only its outline appeared large, hunched, covered in frost. Then its eyes opened, glowing white without pupils. Not warm dragon eyes. Cold, empty eyes. The creature stepped forward on long limbs. Its body was twisted, stretched as if the ice itself had changed it. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of jagged teeth coated in frozen vapor. An ice beast. One of the predators, rumored to live in the deepest parts of the caves. A creature that hunted warmth. A creature that never stopped moving until it fed. Mark's heart hammered. He held the babies protectively, pulling his jacket tight against his body. The beast sniffed the air and growled, sensing heat, their heat. "No," Mark whispered. "You're not getting them." He backed away, but the beast stepped closer, claws clicking on the ice. Its breath came out in a sharp mist as cold as knives. For a moment, the entire cave seemed to freeze. Then Mark did something he never thought he would do. He planted his feet, raised his flashlight like a weapon, and shouted, "Stay away from them." His voice echoed through the chamber, brave, loud, and full of something the beast had never heard before. Human courage. The beast snarled and lunged. Mark stood his ground. The ice beast charged with a roar that shook loose snow from the cave ceiling. Its white eyes glowed like cold fire. Its limbs moved in wild, uneven motions, but every step carried heavy force. Mark had no weapon, only a flashlight and two tiny dragon babies who trusted him with their lives. He tightened his arms around his jacket, keeping the babies close. Their small bodies trembled hard enough to make his heart ache. He could feel their fear as clearly as his own. "Hold on," he whispered to them. "I'm not leaving you." The beast lunged. Mark dove to the side just in time. The creature's claws slashed the ground where he had been standing a moment earlier, sending shards of ice into the air. Mark rolled across the frozen floor, gasping from the shock. He pushed himself up, legs shaking. The beast turned toward him again, sniffing the air. It followed heat, their heat. It dragged its huge body forward, scraping its limbs across the ground in slow, terrifying strokes. Mark knew he couldn't outrun it in these narrow tunnels. And he couldn't hide its senses were too strong. He needed a new plan. Something human. Something clever. His eyes darted around the chamber. The glowing frozen pool near the center was cracked, thin in certain spots. Beneath it, the strange blue light pulsed like a beating heart. And he remembered how warm it had felt earlier, even through the ice. Warmth. The beast chased warmth. Mark took a deep breath. "Okay," he whispered. "Let's hope this works." The babies peered out from inside his jacket, their bright eyes full of fear. Mark gave them a gentle pat before pulling the cloth tight again. The beast roared and rushed forward. Mark ran not away, but toward the glowing pool. His boots slid on the slick floor as he reached the edge. The ice groaned under his weight, warning him that it could break at any second. Behind him, the beast's claws scraped closer. "Come on, follow me," Mark murmured, his breath shaking. The beast lunged again. Mark jumped to the side at the last second, landing near a pillar of rock. The beast, unable to stop its momentum, crashed onto the weak layer of ice over the pool. The ground thundered beneath them, cracks spread instantly across the glowing surface. The beast howled as the ice broke apart under its weight. But it wasn't just falling, it was fighting, gripping at the edges with its frozen limbs. Mark's heart pounded as he watched the creature struggle, its huge teeth snapping in his direction. It wasn't finished. It wasn't defeated. The babies inside his jacket whined softly. Mark swallowed, forcing himself to stay calm. He grabbed a broken piece of crystalness from the ground, a sharp, jagged shard, and moved toward the beast. His body shook from fear, but he kept going. He reached the edge of the pool and, with all the strength he had, smashed the crystal shard against the beast's gripping claws. The ice beast screeched in pain. Its claws slipped. The thin ice beneath it shattered completely. With a final roar, the monster plunged into the glowing cold water below. The light beneath the surface flickered wildly, then grew still. The chamber fell silent except for Mark's ragged breathing. He dropped the crystal shard and sank to his knees, shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. I can't believe that worked. He opened his jacket a little. The babies peeked out, wide-eyed. "You're okay," Mark whispered gently. "We're okay." But even as relief washed through him, the cave gave a deep rumble, one that felt different. Not a threat, a presence. The babies suddenly chirped, their fear melting into excitement. They wriggled so hard that Mark had to hold them steady. "What is it now?" he asked, standing slowly. The blue light beneath the pool began to brighten soft at first, then stronger and stronger until it filled the entire chamber with a warm glow. From the tunnel beyond the pool, a low, distant sound echoed, a sound like a breath drawn through flames, a sound like wings shifting through ancient dust, a sound that carried power, fear, and love all at once. The mother dragon. Mark's breath caught. He felt the babies push against him, wanting to leap from his arms. Their tiny claws gripped with hope instead of terror. A huge shape moved in the doorway. Massive wings brushed the icy walls. The ground shook with each step. She took toward the chamber. She came not as a rumor, not as a myth, but as a living force of nature. A mother searching for her lost young. Mark stood very still, holding the babies close. As the dragon's giant glowing eyes fixed on him, the mother dragon stepped into the chamber like a walking storm. Her enormous wings brushed long lines of frost off the cave walls. Blue light flowed beneath her scales, shifting and pulsing like living fire. Every slow breath she took filled the air with a warm fog that rolled across the frozen ground. Mark had seen amazing things during his years in space, but nothing had ever struck him like this moment. She was beautiful but terrifying, elegant but deadly. A creature built from ancient power, shaped by a world of ice and storms. Her eyes locked onto him, two bright, burning blue orbs. Mark froze. His muscles refused to move. The dragon stared at him as if she could see straight through his skin, into his lungs, into every thought he had. Inside his jacket, the babies wriggled wildly. They chirped, squeaked, and pressed out against the cloth. Their mother answered with a deep, rolling sound, half breath, half flame. It echoed through the cavern like a song, a mother calling to her children. Mark swallowed hard. Fear rushed through him, but another emotion rose to respect. The mother dragon had crossed storms, danger, and deep caves to reach this place. She must have believed her young were still alive. She must have felt them somehow. He slowly unzipped his jacket. The babies popped their heads out, their little eyes glowing with joy. They chirped louder, desperate to reach her. The mother dragon lowered her head. Her huge snout nearly touched the floor. Steam curled from her nostrils as she breathed in deeply. She smelled them. She smelled him too. Her wings tensed. The air grew hotter. The cave floor shook under her claws. Mark knew this moment could go very wrong. If she thought he had harmed her babies, if she thought he had stolen them, if she was confused by fear and grief, she could kill him with one strike. But Mark did not step back. He did not lift his hands in fear. He did not hide the babies. He slowly held them up instead. His voice was quiet, steady, filled with honest warmth. "They came to me for help. They were freezing. I kept them safe." The words echoed through the cave, bouncing off the stone like soft ripples of truth. The dragon opened her mouth, not to roar, not to attack, but to make a deep, low note that vibrated through Mark's bones. It carried gratitude, confusion, ancient strength, and a question. She moved closer. Mark's heart slammed painfully against his ribs as her massive head filled his entire vision. Each scale on her face was bigger than his hand. Every breath she exhaled pushed warm wind across his skin. The babies began to squirm harder. Mark gently placed them on the icy ground between himself and their mother. The little dragons chirped and stumbled forward, their tiny wings lifting awkwardly for balance. The mother dragon bent down and nudged them softly with her snout. Her movements, so huge and powerful, became gentle and loving. She curled her neck around them, checking every scale, every tiny wing, every breath. A low, emotional rumble filled the chamber, a sound so full of relief that it almost brought tears to Mark's eyes. She had found her children they nuzzled against, her jaw uncurled into the warm space under her throat. The glowing lines on her body brightened, like a fire waking inside her chest. Mark smiled softly. "You're safe now," he whispered. "All of you." The mother dragon lifted her head again, turning back toward him. This time, her eyes were not sharp, not angry, not filled with fear. They were calm. She leaned closer until her snout nearly touched Mark's shoulder. He held still, not breathing. The warmth rolling off her face wrapped around him. Slowly, carefully, she nudged him. With her forehead. A gesture of thanks. A gesture of trust. A gesture no human had ever earned before. Mark let out a shaky breath, unable to stop the awe spreading across his face. The dragon mother, a creature strong enough to tear through ice with one strike, had just bowed her head to a human. His kindness had saved her family. But the moment of peace lasted only a few seconds. The cave walls suddenly trembled with a long, deep rumble. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The air vibrated violently. The dragon mother reacted instantly. Her wings snapped open, covering the babies. Her eyes darted toward the far tunnels with fierce alertness. Mark stepped back, gripping the nearest ice pillar for balance. What now? A roar echoed through the darkness. Not the beast he defeated. Something bigger, something older, something awakened by all the noise and light. The mother dragon growled, flames licking between her teeth. This time, she wasn't alone. Mark wasn't either. The next danger was coming, and they would face it together. The roar from the deep tunnels rolled through the chamber like thunder trapped underground. It was so loud that the ice walls shook, shedding crystals that fell like blue snow. Mark felt the vibration travel through his boots, up his legs, all the way into his chest. Even the air seemed to tremble. The mother dragon lowered her head protectively over her babies. Her wings curled around them like giant shields. Blue flames flickered between her teeth, ready to strike. Mark took a step backward, but not because he wanted to run. He needed space to see the danger coming and maybe to help. His heart pounded hard, but inside that fear was a stubborn fire. He had come too far to abandon them now. The roar came again, closer. A cold wind blasted through the tunnel, blowing Mark's hair back. A long shadow stretched across the cave floor. At first, Mark thought another beast was coming, something huge. Maybe even worse than the ice creature he defeated. Then he saw it. A second dragon. But not like the mother. This one was massive in a different way. Its scales were dull, gray, cracked by age. Deep wounds ran across its wings. Its eyes glowed faint gold, dimmer than the mother's bright blue. It looked tired, injured, but still full of dangerous power. The babies whimpered. They knew this dragon, and they feared it. The mother dragon let out a sharp cry, half warning, half challenge. Sparks danced along her wings. The ground shook beneath her stance. The old dragon answered with a long, slow growl that held anger. And also pain. Mark could feel it. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The old dragon stepped forward, limping slightly. Its chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. Ice clung to its wounds. It looked like it had fought the storm and survived, but barely. Mark stared, confused. Is it an enemy? He whispered. The mother dragon shifted her wings, pushing her babies behind her. She growled again, protective, fierce, ready to fight. The old dragon growled back, but this time the sound wavered. It wasn't the roar of a predator. It wasn't a threat, it was sorrow. Mark felt a chill crawl down his spine. This creature wasn't here to attack. It was here because it had lost something too before he could think. The mother dragon unleashed a burst of blue fire into the air, a warning shot that lit the entire cave. The old dragon staggered, but didn't back away. It lifted its head, exposing a deep wound on its neck. Mark's eyes widened. The wound. It matched the broken nest. It matched the signs of a violent struggle. This old dragon hadn't destroyed the baby's home. It had tried to protect it. Mark stepped forward without meaning to. Stop! He shouted. The mother dragon snapped her head toward him, surprised. The old dragon did the same. Mark's hands trembled, but his voice stayed strong. You're hurt, he said to the old dragon. You've been fighting to survive, haven't you? The creature blinked slowly, almost in confusion. It leaned its huge head down, exhaling a weak stream of cold mist. Not hostile, not angry. Mark swallowed hard. He continued speaking, though he didn't know if they understood his words, but he believed they would understand his intent. The babies. They need all of you. Their mother. And maybe you. Whoever you are. Family or guardian. Whatever your role is. They need you alive. The cavern grew quiet, unnaturally quiet. The mother dragon studied him. Her flames softened. Her wings lowered a little. The babies peeked out from behind her, chirping uncertainly. Then something unbelievable happened. The mother dragon slowly nudged one baby toward the old dragon. A test of trust. The baby waddled forward, stopped halfway, and chirped softly. The old dragon lowered its giant head. It breathed gently over the baby, its golden eyes glowing warmer for the first time. Mark felt emotion swell in his chest. They weren't enemies. They were all one family, just broken by fear, storms, and loss. The mother dragon stepped closer, touching her forehead to the old dragon's in a gesture so ancient and meaningful that the cave lights flickered brighter. Their glowing patterns flowed together like two rivers merging into one. A bond repaired. A family reunited. The babies chirped excitedly and rushed between their mother and the old dragon. Warm blue light filled the chamber like a sunrise. Mark watched with a soft smile. He felt small, but not unimportant. He had helped make this moment possible. A human tiny next to these giants had stood his ground, protected children not his own, and spoken with honesty from his heart. The mother dragon turned to him once more. Her large golden blue eyes softened. She reached forward and gently touched the top of his chest with her snout. Something warm dropped into his hands. A glowing dragon scale, bright blue, pulsing with soft heat. A gift. A thank you. A sign of trust never given to a human before. Mark nodded slowly. Take care of them, he whispered. And thank you. The dragon's mother, children, and ancient guardian moved deeper into the cave, their steps echoing like distant thunder. Light followed them, fading slowly into the dark until the chamber became quiet again. Mark stood alone in the silence, holding the glowing scale closed. It warmed him more deeply than any blanket ever could. When he returned to the station, the crew stared in shock as the dragon light still flickered across his jacket. Mark only smiled, keeping the story close to his heart. On this frozen world, humans and dragons now shared a secret, one born from kindness, courage, and one gentle night when two tiny dragon babies crawled under a human's blanket for warmth. And that was the beginning of something greater than anyone could imagine.